Hey, what's going on, y'all? Now, in today's video, I want to talk about self-improvement and taking advantage of resistance and utilizing it as an opportunity for growth. You know, one of these great quotes I heard in a church song not too long ago is, God takes everything Satan meant for evil and he turns it for good. And I think that we have this same power in our lives when we align and act out of the power of the Lord Almighty. We act out of the power of goodness itself. Something I want to do nowadays is speak maybe to a more general audience. I know not everyone believes in God, but there is the essence of goodness that we all can tap into, that we all can act out of. And when we decide to do this, we have the power of what the ancients would have called alchemy, which is transmutation. It's taking something that's in a more base state and transforming it into its higher state, into a higher state, into something that's better. And so we can take negative situations in our life, situations that cause resistance for us, that cause opposing force, that go against us, and we can flip it on its head and make it work for us. And even losses, situations that turn into negatives for us, we can extrapolate a lesson from that, learn something, and we can transform that loss into a gain, and get a gain from that and transforming it so it's no longer a loss, it's a win. So let's go off this topic and start with what I'm looking at outside right now, a tree. As I said, I want to make this for a more general audience. I had someone comment when I made this example last time that gravity's a hoax. I would disagree, but you don't have to believe in gravity to understand that when something has mass, if a being with mass, if I decide to jump up in the air, my mass is going to drag me back down. Whether or not you believe there's an opposing force to our growth, there's something that whenever we go up, we fall back down. There's something that wants to bring us back down. Be that our own mass, be that the force of gravity pushing against us. Be that again, this is just for the reference of a tree, but you can make this for an analogous for our real life, our everyday life. It's like whenever we decide I want to pick up this challenge, I want to pick up this new hobby, learning guitar, for example. There's the force of us ourselves that wants to succeed, that when we start to fail, it's like, I'm not learning as fast as I want. I'm failing right now. I'm not succeeding. This is not for me. And we throw away the hobby. We throw away this great opportunity for us to be successful in a new area. A little side note, I was watching this guy skateboard, a little short, and he was learning a new move, somewhere he had to kind of twist the board, jump up, twist the board, grab it, and then fall back down on it. I don't know what it was called, I'm not a skateboarder. But it was cool to watch because at the very beginning, he couldn't do it at all. This is a pretty experienced skateboarder, and he couldn't do it at all. And I'm looking at him like, how's he's not going to learn this move. Internally, it didn't look like he had the ability to learn the move. And progressively, every single clip, he got a little better, a little better, a little better, until he could do it. And then he could do it well, with ease. And it was like, wow. To see him go from not being able to do it whatsoever to being able to do it through the force of patience and dedication, to being willing to go through the failures to get to that success, to being willing to push past the resistance of being unable to do it, of doubting himself within, of that piece of him that needed the success now instead of having to be patient and work for it. He fought past all the resistance of that and got to the end of having that move now in his arsenal, having a new move to be able to use, show his friends, and enjoy while he skateboards. In that same way, when a tree is growing, it has to grow against the force of gravity. And the force of gravity, being that it's always pushing against it, the tree utilizes this as a signal that it needs to grow up past it. It sees it as something it needs to break through. And maybe a tree is not consciously fully doing this, but there's something of the tree's programming that says, I need to go up. That's the sunlight. And it has a force resisting it that's pushing against it. But it says, man, that force be damned, I'm going up. And it uses that force as an opportunity to grow. It uses that force as something that it can go against, to break past. If a chicken that's in an egg, felt the boundaries of its egg and said, you know what, I'm staying here forever, it would be stagnated. It would be locked into a form that is devolved. It would never reach its full evolution of becoming a free chicken. It would stay trapped in that egg and would be an egg encased being for the rest of its life. It's because the chicken realizes there's more out there. I need to access that more. I'm going to break through this egg. I'm going to break through this barrier that's holding me back, that it can break out and become a whole new being, a more evolved, grown being. It can break out into a new environment in which it can become its better self. The self it's always meant to become. And in this way, this is our metamorphosis. Caterpillar's got to go through the same thing. If the caterpillar never decides to break free of the cocoon that it creates for itself to then grow, this is the resistance. It's the resistance can protect us, but the resistance also, or so the thing that's resisting us can protect us for a time, but after a period of time, we have to be willing to break past that barrier, to go outside of our comfort zone, to enter a new metamorphosis, to become an aggrandized and more evolved version of who we are. And I would say, once again, the self that we're always supposed to be. It's when we decide not to access, excuse me, it's when we decide not, I don't know that whole video, golly. Anyway, it's when we decide not to access that better version of ourselves. When we decide not to access that better form of ourselves, again, we stay stagnated and we start to rot in our old form. We never see our true potential. And if you ask me, if I'm looking at things from a natural perspective, wasting something is the greatest sin. When you've been given an opportunity to grow, when you've been handed, and basically when you've been handed the initiative to become something better, with all the potential and all the ability, and all that's holding you back is breaking past resistance, and you choose not to. It's like you start to stagnate, you start to rot, you start to become worse, you start to become devolved, and you never see who you really could be. And it's when you don't enter that new form that you hold yourself back. And I don't know if y'all, some people really do get content in being held back. They get content in their worst self. But I really do feel that whenever you break into that new self, your life levels up. You get to experience something new. It's like playing a video game. I'm sure I got a lot of gamers here. And you get comfortable, you get cool with a level, with a certain area. But it's after you decide, okay, I'm too good for this level. I need to go to the next level. You get a whole new experience. Life opens up for you once again, and you get to have things that are now up to your new level. You could stay in that same area for a while, but that stuff gets boring, it gets useless, and honestly, it makes the game far less fun. So if we're calling this game of life, the game that we're playing right now, we should be willing to push past our old boundaries, to break into new areas, to experience the better form of ourselves, and to evolve into a greater being that is us. All right, y'all. I pray that this video was able to enlighten, inspire, and motivate you to maybe look at some of those things, those areas in your life that are acting as resistance, that are holding you back, and being willing to say, you know what, I'm going to break past this. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to break past. Because, it's like, it's when we get held back by these negative events and situations, these losses, maybe continuous losses that are resisting us. We can see that, hold up, this loss here, this loss may be signaling a potential success. It was said that Hershey, the man who started the Hershey's company, he had failed 6 different businesses before he finally took off with his company, the Hershey's. And, look how big that got. Worldwide, world famous, billion, trillion-dollar company. I'm sure it's in the billions. $1 billion company. It's like it's going through those successes that finally opens up an opportunity for a win. You gain experience, you gain lessons, you start to learn how to take wins whenever you go through losses, as long as you're willing to learn those things through the experience, through taking notes, through being humble and receiving, like, okay, I did this wrong, I can do better at this next time. That's how we grow, and that's how we evolve through our losses. Again, it's like we have to go through failures if we ever want to see success. If that skateboarder hadn't gone through those continual failures, he never would have saw success. If I hadn't been willing, I remember the first song I ever learned on ukulele before I learned guitar and all these other instruments. If I hadn't been willing to try to, for months, practice the transition between, I think it's A minor to G. It was such a pain to transition from A minor to G. But I did that over and over again, and after about a month, I could finally strum a full A minor to G to see the riptide chords. And it's little things like that again, it's such a wonderful, it's such a empowering experience when we break past adversity and come to our win streak and come to a place where we're being successful and where we can bask in that success, if you will. All right, y'all. Once again, I pray this video helped you out and showed you the value of pushing past your failures, coming into success, and transforming what could have been something negative into something positive, utilizing resistance as an opportunity for growth. All right, y'all. Take care. Peace.